Everything's changing in PR these days, so now what? Between Tiffany and I, Sterling has attended more than half a dozen events this year, from Silicon Valley pitch nights to ocean tech panels in Honolulu. Today, we're breaking down what we're seeing on the ground, where startups are finding traction, where investors are paying attention, and what the Hawaii tech scene looks like from the inside. Tiffany, it's so good to talk to you today.
Yeah, can you believe this is our first Now What, by the way, together
This
since you came back to Sterling?
is our
I can't believe this is our first recording.
no pressure, no pressure.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about what we've been up to this year as far as attending events, and between the Sterling team and you and I, we've attended a lot. We're here in April, and I think that, from everything from health tech to energy to technology in Hawaii, we've gone to lots of networking events. For our friends out there, they're probably like, why do these PR folks need to attend all these investor conferences, and why is it so important for Sterling to be in the room? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, so much of our work life now is online. So getting out with the innovators, with the founders, with the investors live in person, whether you're at a conference or a networking event, is so incredibly insightful. But it's also really energizing at the same time. The idea of kind of all being in the same room, whether it's to listen to a panel or, just for general networking, it just really helps to kind of build those relationships that don't happen all the time online. For me, that's a huge draw, is being in the room and hearing the conversations and being introduced to people that it just simply wouldn't happen otherwise when I'm at home. How about you? I mean, like, what's kind of driving you to get out to the events?
I completely agree. Sterling is 100% remote. And I think opportunities like this to connect are more important than they were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, because, going to these conferences used to be just part of the deal that our clients would do. And so sometimes we would attend, sometimes we wouldn't, but we didn't place as much importance on them because we had more daily interaction with one another and with prospects and with clients. And we don't have that as much now. So for me, just like you said, going to these events is energizing. It's also informative. It gives me fuel for ideas to bring to our clients. It gives me ideas for folks that we can work with in the future as we lean into health tech and mission-driven organizations and climate tech. All these conferences just give us insight and data to help us do better at our jobs, as well as just connecting.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you on that 100%. I'd love a kind of a recap. You've been to more events this year than I have, geographically, at a disadvantage in some respects there. But because you've been to so many more events than me, I'd love to get a recap on like which ones you've been to so far. What have been the highlight events so far in 2026?
Q1 started with an event in January put on locally. I do have the benefit of living in the Bay Area, so I was able to attend Penn Ventures startup event held at the Plug and Play Center in Sunnyvale, which was really cool. Hundreds of people showed up to watch, at least 30 folks pitch their startup pitch. So while it was a long day, I found it incredibly exciting to, one, listen to these folks. They were mostly in the health tech space, but just across the spectrum, leaning into physical AI, leaning into quantum computing, just sort of that what's next. And that was really exciting. Then I got to go to JP Morgan in San Francisco, the healthcare conference, and that's a big buzz in the city, and that's really exciting. Fast forward to Distribute Tech this year, which was down in San Diego. That's a big energy conference. And that one was huge, talking about everything from wildfire and weather intelligence to predictive grid analytics. For me, all of that stuff just fuels the fire for the work that we're doing with our clients and just the work that we're doing next this year. And then peppered in there was several little tiny networking events that would either be locally in San Jose or in San Francisco. And these are small. They're at a bar often, or just a smaller venue, and let's say there's 20 to 50 people, there's at least 5 startups that give their spiel. Again, you just get the opportunity to connect with folks, often really early stage, especially those smaller networking ones. But you get to give back even to your own community because they're like, oh, you work in PR? So there's always an opportunity for us to engage. And while we might not work with some of these earlier stage startups, it does give the opportunity down the line, one, to make the connection now, to be a resource for them if they need it. And then, who knows what comes up in the future as they grow and scale. How about you? How was the Hawaii scene last week?
I live out here on Maui, so I had the opportunity to fly over to Oahu for East Meets West 2026, and it was my first one. It was their 12th one that they've put on, but it was the first one that I attended, and I am so happy that I got to meet up with so many different founders and investors and just kind of companies across Hawaii. To get off of Maui for a couple of days was really great because it really builds here in Hawaii because we have fewer of these larger in-person events. Hawaii Tech Week was kind of my first foray into it last year, where I met a number of people, and it was really cool walking into East Meets West and like almost immediately being, embraced in a hug by people that I had met 6 months ago, and seeing them again in person was really fun. So it was kind of a bit of a reunion, if you will, when you meet up at the in-person events here in Hawaii, and then you get to kind of see the evolution of where our founders are going with the different technologies and the accelerator programs and what's being invested. And what was unique about East Meets West, or is with this particular event, is that it's also bringing in other founders and startups and investors from other parts of the world. So we had a lot of Pacific Rim organizations that were there from Korea and Japan, and as well as Hawaii and the West Coast were there pitching. So that was kind of cool to kind of broaden that. We're such a geographic meeting point in the Pacific, and we're really leveraging that with these types of conferences. So that was a lot of fun. And in Hawaii, it's really about building community and who you know, and fostering that, whether you're looking for a job or you're looking for professional services or you're partnering with folks. It's about how you show up and when you show up and how helpful you are. So the face time is, I think, almost more important than in Silicon Valley. I think we used to take that for granted living there because there were so many different events that you could do. So here in Hawaii, we really kind of step up and all show up for our tech startups and our community in that way. So that's been really cool so far this year.
That's a good reminder, because I do think when you live somewhere outside of the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, there's still a lot of interesting tech stuff going on. And I think when you have the opportunity to learn and dig into that community from a PR folks perspective, it's kind of great. But even as early stage founders, it's really great. Completely off topic, but last week, because you were at the event in Hawaii, we were talking about sort of the ocean and ocean tech, blue tech, if you will. And you shared with me a fact that I just was a little shocked by, and I'm probably going to get it wrong. But if the ocean were a nation, it would be was it the eighth wealthiest nation?
Seventh or eighth. Yeah, I think it was the eighth.
There, seventh or eighth wealthiest nation in the world. Yeah. And that shocked me because you shared that with me, because I was also going to a blue tech networking event in San Francisco, and I thought that fun fact was kind of cool. I don't always think of it that way. But as we, have been exploring working with more companies in this space and just its evolution, you realize just how powerful and important the technology is that is coming to this space.
That's something I want to talk to you about, because we're talking about events and we want to dig into the startup world and kind of everything that's happening there. But let's talk about this like event experience for a second. There's a difference between showing up on LinkedIn and watching a video recap, or reading a blog post, which I have about East Meets West, and actually attending and getting to engage that way. And so when you're attending events, I'm really curious about, really what stands out for you that makes these in-person events kind of worth going to.
Yeah. A couple things. So I think there is power in repetition. These events can be kind of expensive to attend sometimes, whether the bigger ones, especially DTech, JP Morgan. But what you find also at these bigger events is smaller sub-events, because not everybody, one, is going to pay to have a booth on the show floor, or two, they're realizing that if you host a networking event or something else offsite, that might just be just as lucrative, if not more. So leaning into why that's important for us, and like what I was seeing there, it's just this energy and this excitement and this shared sort of, I guess, philosophy, so to speak, of why we're coming together and the work we're doing. And, there's just a buzz around it that you can't get at home on LinkedIn and whatnot. So what I was seeing at the bigger events was more people, number one. So more people are leaning into going, and back to my thought on like Distributech. Going
Yeah.
once is great, going twice is better. The more you go to an event, I think the more you build the relationships. I think it's important to own a couple of those key events per your industry that you're targeting. But then, of course, don't discount the smaller stuff because there is a lot of smaller events, whether they be small networking things or educational stuff. That's where startup can come. That's where that little, diamond in the rough might be
Yeah.
that they can't get to the big show yet, or they've got this great exciting story to tell. And how are they showing up? I mean, they're showing up to these smaller networking events. They're doing their pitch, and what I'm seeing there, and even from talking to some of the venture teams that are there, also checking out what's going on, is that we're seeing more and more with the growth of startups right now. I mean, obviously investments a little stalled right now, and there's all kinds of nuances to that. That's another topic. But, leaning into the fact that there's more startups coming on the scene, there's more to be done with AI and different machine learning and different technologies that are coming on the scene. So what I'm seeing from all this events and startup world is that everything is still pushing forward at a rapid pace. And it's these startups are showing up. But one thing I do notice from the startup scene is that I think from a communications perspective, they could use a little coaching. That came from some conversations I had with some of the VCs after. And one of the questions I asked one of the gentlemen there was, when should a startup bring on a comms team? Because it seems really early stage sometimes for some of these startups. And he said, it's usually too late. It should be right away. The second you're making that deck to present to investors, the second you're putting out that first press release, it's not something you should do without partners, because usually founders just don't have experience in that space. But of course they don't have money. It's all like, there's not a lot of money for a startup and this and that and the other. And I'm probably rambling off topic.
No, no, that makes a lot of sense because that's something we encounter when we talk to early stage companies initially a lot of the time, and that sentiment is echoed at the events. And I think where kind of an agile and nimble agency like ours can fill the gap is that we don't have to have huge engagements every single time we work with a client. We have started slow and worked out some arrangements where we can coach through this pitch process and giving feedback on every stage for startup founders, whether they're just still kind of honing their messaging or whether they're getting ready to go in for a huge investor pitch and kind of everything in between. So I think you make a really good point there, is that advocating for early messaging and really tightening that up is incredibly important for founders at all stages.
When I show up at these networking events that are a little smaller and, not quite the DTech or the JP Morgan or even, the East Meets West Tech event, I just try to be a friend or offer guidance and be there. Like if you got a question moving forward, reach out. You're thinking about something, you don't know if you should go after this event or that event, or you should do a press release for your launch. Ping me. I'm happy to answer a question. But I think it's really important as we build these relationships with these companies who are building their product line and launching into the market. PR is new for them. Marketing is new for them. And just making sure that they have someone who can just gut check on, I think is a nice first step outside of, hey, be a client. We'd love that. Of course, it takes time and you got to cultivate and build relationships. And I think that's one of the great things about all of these networking events. Plus, they're just all doing pretty cool stuff and it's really neat to learn about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite company or finding at last week's event?
Yes, I mean, a lot. It's kind of hard to distill down. And so I think what made the event overall really fantastic was that there was that great mix of networking, both kind of structured and organic, that happens, but also the keynotes. Like this is something that I really noticed from the beginning. I attended the conference day on day 2, which was for a larger audience. And the keynotes were structured in a way that the speakers were highly relevant. So especially for Hawaii, when we talk about the blue economy, which you brought up, and I definitely want to dig into that a little bit more, as well as with space, given our location. But there's a lot happening beyond that with like customer service and hospitality. And so there's just really cool things percolating here in the islands. But the event itself the keynotes were arranged in such a way that the speakers were incredibly relevant and topical to what's happening today in Hawaii. And we came away with really great learnings. And that's where I got really excited kind of early on with that Blue Economy one that Trung Lam and Helena did just out of the gate in the morning. I was so excited with the learnings about the Blue Economy that I was in the women's room after that event in line texting you, like, you need to know about this information, and I'm sending you my notes, and can you believe that this industry is like so much more funding? Like since 2017, the number of funds helping to accelerate the Blue Economy has gone from 3 to like 50, right? And we're talking, it's a $24 trillion asset value for ocean technology globally. And so the growth there and the excitement was just, you could just sense it, given that most of us that were in the room are surrounded by the ocean. That kind of exciting takeaway from an event where we're knowledge sharing on top of the networking and the connecting is really important for me as I look to, participate at different levels. So that was super exciting. Like I was all about texting that information to you ahead of your event.
I was heading to the Blue Tech event that night in San Francisco at the South Beach Yacht Club, which was really cool. But you're like, hey, listen to this, and you shared that with me. And I definitely brought it up in conversation that night because I just was myself blown away by that statistic and also really energized by it and being able to have those conversations. So, back to that earlier question of like, why is Sterling showing up in these rooms? And why are we going to this events and, putting ourselves out there in that way? It's for this exact reason, not just to meet people and network, but also to fuel the work that we do, to bring ideas to the clients. Sitting at a conference for 2 days, I take away so much more that I could bring back to the client or even prospects or the team about knowledge and what's going on. It's just easier to digest it all in that type of environment than, let's say, if I'm like scrolling on my computer reading the news in the morning. Just totally, completely different environments. And I think we got away from events for a long, long time post-COVID, and understandably, but now we're just getting back in there and realizing the importance of those connections. And it really, at those events, all of them, it's about connecting, learning.
The various events that you've attended, what the AI through line has been like. What are the conversations that are happening around AI? We can't get away from it no matter what we do. It is part of the zeitgeist today, and it's influencing tech on a number of levels. But I feel like some of these events give us a little bit of advance warning about or knowledge about what's coming down. I'm curious what that's looked like for you at your events.
The very first event I went to, the one that was the Penn Ventures folks, and it was the 30 startup pitches. For those folks, AI was dated. These are Series A, some early funded folks. They wanted physical AI. They wanted quantum. They wanted more machine learning technology. So that was interesting. Fast forward to JP Morgan. I think it was cautious. AI was cautious. It felt like maybe it had been a little overhyped, but it's like, okay, here we are to see where it's going. So they were leaning into AI for operations, drug discovery, and like care delivery, but still realizing that the ROI of that was probably a good 3 years out. The hype was calming down. At Distributech, it was leaning into the data. As from an energy perspective, we have so much more data to use to make decisions, to manage the grid, to predict wildfire and weather events. So I did feel from the energy's perspective, they were leaning into data, but leaning into AI to analyze that data and whatnot. And then, of course, you have robotics. If AI was last year, it was robotics this year from an events perspective and what folks were leaning into. And then again, back to that physical AI. So how is AI seeing the world around us? That really lends itself to the robotics. So across the board, that's what I saw about AI. How is it in Honolulu?
So in terms of AI and what we're seeing here in Hawaii, we're definitely still seeing kind of that software trend with customer service improvement and up-leveling hospitality industries. But what we're also seeing is that play into the ocean tech. And what was on display in one of the sessions was a flood sensing tool or that water monitors water levels in certain areas and sends that data and does the text alerts, which is incredibly timely here for Hawaii, given that we just came out of a batch of pretty impactful storms across the state. So seeing something homegrown out of University of Hawaii was really cool. And so I think we're going to start to see a little bit more of the software hardware play. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for as well. Stepping away from the computer and seeing how AI is helping us with kind of our everyday tools. And like you mentioned, fire prevention and awareness and things like that. I think we're going to see a growth in that area. I think it was really interesting as well. Also at East Meets West, part of what was going on over the course of the week, there was a founder and investor day the day before, which was the East Meets West Summit. All of this is put on by Blue Startups. The conference day, we also had one of their speakers come over, and Tim Draper of Meet the Drapers was on stage talking to Chino Farnsworth of Blue Startups about where he wants to invest. Right. And what was really important for him as he's looking at new technologies and he's talking to founders was, how are you taking something that's really expensive and really broken and fixing it? And so when we think about the things that cost us the most right now, whether it's healthcare or in finance and insurance and other things, how is the new technologies fixing that and addressing that quickly? And that those are the things, like, we need to fix what's broken first and foremost. Like, cool new things are great, but what's that impact on our pocketbooks and our day-to-day quality of life, right?
Yeah, that reminds me of what we try to tell people that come on board, especially as clients or who are talking to us, defining who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, and really knowing that and owning it. And I think, like you just said, supporting what problem are you solving, and making that crystal clear with your language and your presentation, because I've seen a lot of startup presentations this year, and some are good and some are great and some fall a little flat. I don't know what your thoughts were on what you saw, but after sitting through 5 hours one day of startup presentations, I definitely have my thoughts on what makes a good one, even if they're only 2 minutes each.
I watched probably 8 or 9 of them last week. And I will say that you have a certain amount of time, right? I think the pitch was like 4 minutes. And there's a lot of information that you want to get to the panel of judges or that one investor that you're trying to talk to. In this case, it was a panel. And you've got this big room full of people also listening in. The ones that did the best were the ones, in my opinion, that they took it slow. They told me what the problem was. They told me they told me a story about how their technology was solving that problem. And they told me how I could help or get involved, or like what was needed, what was next. And I felt like with those that I walked away really truly understanding what this technology was, how it was going to affect me as a consumer, maybe as an investor, and I had minimal questions. The ones that sped through the data and talked so quickly and tried to really tell me absolutely everything about their business in 4 minutes, I was like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to care about right now. Like what's really truly important. Like that's where founders probably need the most amount of coaching, is taking a beat and like really understanding, okay, who's your audience today and what is it that you need to convey in like 3 points. What action do you want this person to take? And that needs to all be in alignment there. And you need to do it at a pace that isn't just going to shut the listener down. So those were definitely from a comms perspective, the things that I noticed coming out of last week's pitches.
It's funny that those ones that go faster with the most amount of data become the most forgettable, because I think they just overwhelm and you're like, I don't even know what they just said. You obviously have to know your audience as a founder or any company, whether you're pitching in a room of investors and you have an hour. That's a completely different conversation than a room of investors and an audience and you have 4 minutes. So distilling that storyline down to 4 minutes is a challenge. And that's when I think folks should really consider working with a partner in that space, because it's hard to do. It's really not easy to take a robust 2-hour deck and whittle it down to the most interesting 4 minutes or even 2 minutes. And I think that's when you need to consider a PR partner at those early stages, especially.
Yeah, it's time to get coaching, time to get a mentor.
That's great that East Meets West went was so well last week. I know you've been more involved with Hawaii's Women in Tech. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is and how that's going for you?
So Hawaii Women in Tech is a nonprofit organization. It started as a meetup on Oahu, actually, like back in 2019, and was more formalized in the last couple of years and received its 501c3 designation last October. I learned about Hawaii Women in Tech last year at Tech Week and knew kind of instantly from the first event that I went to that this is something I got to be more involved in. This is really cool. And got to know a few of the board members and other members of the organization and joined the board earlier this year as director of marketing not long ago, about 8 weeks or so ago, and kind of hit the ground running. So East Meets West was actually one of the first times for me to meet a number of my board colleagues in person, which was fantastic. And so Hawaii Women in Tech is an organization that is really here to bring together talent and opportunities here in the state of Hawaii for those in tech and tech adjacent fields. So it's a really broad kind of group, but what we're here to do is help with networking, professional development, and mentoring. So we got our start, like I said, as a meetup where we're just coming together, and now we're a bit more of a professional network. And so you can join Hawaii Women in Tech. It's free. It's open to everybody. We use a platform called Clue Up that you can learn about us and our mission and all the things that we do and our upcoming events at hawaiiwomenintech.org. It's just a very welcoming place for those who are maybe new to the tech industry, tech curious, maybe mid-career looking to make a shift. It's a really cool group of people from all industries, from aerospace, AI, engineering, education, you name it. There is somebody represented from that industry in our organization. So we would love to welcome new members. And if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to tell you more.
Well, congratulations on joining that board. We look forward to hearing more about that this year.
It's been really fun. We're doing some really cool things. We'll have a lot going on at Hawaii Tech Week later this year, as well as a lot of online things, meetups on Oahu, and we're going to get that Maui chapter going here soon too. So awesome. Lots to come.
Well, Tiffany, we've had a really solid Q1. We really jumped in as a team, attending as many events as possible. And I think it's proven to us that the energy that we get from that human connection is just as important as the research that we might do online, maybe even more important, right? Because what you extract from being involved or listening in on a panel discussion or attending a luncheon with a group of your peers where you get to talk about what's going on at the event that day, you take home energy from those conversations with those real human beings. You take home insights from that dialogue with the folks that you heard on that panel. And to me, that's the part that I think that we need to remember. We don't get that when we work remote all the time. And so we need to put ourselves out there and get out there and meet our peers and meet the subject matter experts in the spaces that we're most interested in. So I'm looking forward to the next half of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And as one of our colleagues calls it, ambient energy that we get from those events. Yep. And it kind of radiates. And you and I are both such social beings that I think we generate a lot of energy around that. And you're right, like what's happening, what we're hearing when we're in the room is so incredibly important. It doesn't translate to engaging on LinkedIn or the blog posts that we read or the newsletters. And it was really fun to like walk down the halls or to walk past somebody's table and hear them discussing a session that had just wrapped up. And those conversations are going to continue and they're going to take them home, just like I've brought these conversations from East Meets West back to you guys, and you came back from DTech and all of the other networking events and shared that with us. There's just nothing replaces that human component of us getting out there and doing this together and collaborating.